Thank you very much for joining us today for learning how to do your income taxes. This is the fourth UTOOLS session. We are a partnership between Career Transitions Incorporated and University of Michigan Dearborn with funding from the Michigan College Access Network. We offer weekly informational sessions, primarily college prep information to youth. And this week we have guest speaker, Marlena, and I will let her introduce herself in just a minute. After the session, please stay tuned for our poll and some information about some prizes that we're going to give away for participating in our sessions. Thanks so much. Marlena?
Thank you, Joy. I am feeling very privileged to be able to present to you today. And I feel like the crowd that I have here with me is going to assist me in participating with any questions they may have. You guys feel free to ask any questions. But I'm going to go ahead and just let you know that this session is about making you feel comfortable with doing your taxes. It is not as difficult as it appears. It is not as difficult as people make it sound. And the type of software that we're going to explore today is going to make you feel a lot more comfortable with doing your own taxes, maybe for the first time, maybe getting comfortable enough to take those tax documents away from your tax preparer and saying, you know what, today is the day I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to introduce myself briefly to you for those who've never seen me before. I've been part of the Gear Up program for a while with Mr. Perry Boyd, but I've been away for a little while. And I wanted to get reintroduced to this because it's so much fun. My name is Marlena Berlaku. I've graduated from the University of Michigan Dearborn with an accounting degree. And before I went to UM Dearborn, I was a student of accounting at a community college. I then finished my degree, my 4-year degree in one school. For those of you guys who are interested in the accounting profession, just putting that out there, putting a plug in. You don't always have to start at a full-year university. You can start at a community college for tax savings. Oh, sorry, not tax savings, for money savings, for keeping your costs down. And graduating from a 4-year university only after the 2 years of community college. That's what I did. It was probably the best move I've ever done because I graduated debt free, got a chance to also go into a really cool career. The career that started right in my senior year was with a company called Ernst & Young, which is one of the 4 largest accounting firms in the world. It was a really, really nice experience. I spent 4.5 years there. I prepared individual taxes for really rich individuals. Just to give you an example, there was a guy who made about $10 million a year. And I got the chance to prepare his tax return. And a few years later, I got a chance to also visit his place of business and realize how large his operations were. So taxes tell a lot about people. There's a lot of private information that is shared with tax preparers. And it's a very intimate thing, in my opinion. I absolutely love doing individual taxes. So I've done that for about 1.5 years in my career at Ernst & Young, and also progressed into doing, preparing other tax returns, such as business returns, whether there were partnerships, LLCs, and other entities of this kind. And 4.5 years later, because of the busy seasons, if anyone knows what that is, busy season is tax season. Those are very taxing, no pun intended, on all tax people, right? Because they are these condensed deadlines that we have to meet. And obviously, probably the most well-known one to everyone is April 15. April 15 is when the majority of the people, with a few exceptions, need to file their individual tax returns. And there are a few other deadlines around the year that need to be met by tax individuals. So when you have a position in a company that large, there are many projects, many clients that need to be kept happy, and it's just a very hectic lifestyle. So if you do have a tax preparer, make sure you keep them in mind. Make sure you pray for them around this time because they're losing their minds. Just spoke with someone that is currently struggling with that, and he has been working around the clock, left his office at midnight just the other night. So very hardworking individuals, very knowledgeable, and I have all the respect in the world for them. But I stopped being a tax accountant a few years ago, and am currently doing accounting work as well. But I am the vice president of operations at a company called Storch Magnetics. It is located in Livonia, and it has been in operation for 70 years. So I'm very proud to be part of something so old, I guess, right? A lot of companies are not that old nowadays, and this company has survived for a very long time. However, even though I don't do taxes on a daily basis, I feel that I still hold this subject very close to my heart and wanted to make sure that I share a little bit of the knowledge that I've acquired over the years with all of you, and that you would be able to use some of the tools that I'm going to share in this presentation for your benefit, for the benefits of your families and friends, family members and friends who are interested in making the leap in preparing their taxes or your taxes individually without the help of a tax accountant this year. And again, just want to iterate again that this is not as difficult as it appears, I promise you. So I'm going to go into my presentation. I should have started this a minute ago because I do have a PDF. Sorry, not a PDF, PowerPoint presentation that I could share. So I've already gone through my introduction. I should have put this up a little bit sooner. I've covered my accounting background and my tax work history. I've also gone over my current job. And for those of you who are curious, I won't linger much more on this topic, but the company that I work for right now does some really cool stuff. We produce magnets and magnetic products. Now, those products can be a lot of things, but they all contain magnets. And the most common thing that we do around here is the magnetic slide conveyor. And we hold the world record for the largest magnetic slide conveyor in the world. So it might not sound as cool until you see it, and it's very, very impressive. But going back to taxes, I don't want to go too ahead of myself with my job, just because I'm still here. If you can see the environment here, I'm physically in the office. If we have a couple of people who are willing to volunteer and answer some of my questions, what is the form for individual taxes? Does anyone know?
1040.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Individual taxes are filed using a 1040 form, and that is a form that is issued by the IRS. Now, this form can get updated on occasion, so we do not recommend that anyone downloads this form from the internet and begins filling it out and then mailing it on paper. That used to be the case several years ago, but nowadays so many updates happen to these forms. The best thing to do is to just get the software and do the preparation through the use of the software. And does anyone, we talked about it a little bit, but do you know the due date for filing tax individual returns?
April 15th.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. And for those of you who don't know, you can also extend that deadline. It is not a hard deadline. So April 15, you have to file something, whether it is the individual tax return or an extension. As long as something gets to the IRS by April 15, you are in good shape. The extension form is something that the individual tax return software also provides. And it just tells the IRS, hey, I know this deadline is coming up. I will not be able to make it. I will not be able to make this deadline, but I promise that within the next 6 months, I will. So the 6-month extension gives you the possibility of filing your taxes as late as 10/15, which is October 15 of every year. Just make sure that if you start doing this on your own, you will file either the April 15 tax return, or on April 15, you will file an extension and let the IRS know you need a little bit more time. You do not have to file on October 15th. You can do it even a few days after your extension was filed. You can file your return at any time within that 6-month period. But it is something that you have to do. You have to communicate to the IRS what your plans are, if the plans are to extend. And have any of you filed or paged through a filed tax return, as in, you know, you printed it and you looked through it, or someone handed you a tax return and you got a chance to explore it? Do we have anyone out there?
We're all here.
Oh, as in, like, do you have anyone who's willing to tell me a little bit about your experience going through your tax returns or someone else's tax returns? Have you familiarized yourselves with a tax return in the past?
I actually do mine. I do.
Perfect.
Mine. I've been doing mine for a while, so that I didn't know about the exception, because I usually just use some software. I use usually like Easy Taxes. The software that I use, it pretty much works for me. And then once you've saved all of your W-2 information, I mean, and TurboTax or whoever, I mean, there's not a big difference of savings. So I normally do that one, but I always owe, so I'm not in a rush. I didn't know about the extension, so that was good, because the software, they don't give you other forms, just pretty much straight filing.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. They don't give you that option for extension, so that's good information to know, because especially with me owing all the time.
Yeah, maybe you want to pay that 6 months later, so an extension sounds like it's something that could work for you specifically. I would explore that website a little bit more, the Easy Tax software. Is it a website or is it a downloadable type software?
It's a website.
Yeah, see if there's anything on the website that shows information about an extension. If not, most of these programs also have, or these websites also have, a help button, and you'd be surprised how much wealth of information you can find there, whether it's, you know, talking to someone or chatting with someone about an extension, or just really just digging a little bit deeper and finding something. They should have a little bit more than just the straight up tax return. But I do have to admit that I've never filed a tax extension through this type of software outside of a job. So I guess it varies with each website, but this should be available.
So I have a question. If you are going to file an extension and you know you're going to owe, would you be required to send a deposit of some sort? Or do you just wait until the end?
Oh, sorry, I jumped in a little too soon. You would have to just wait until the taxes are filed. You could, if you wanted, make a payment in advance if your extension computed that for you, but most of the times you can wait until you do your tax return. And I know it's a little bit confusing, but it depends on how you fill out the extension form. And if you have all the information available, you can definitely put that on there. If not, you can wait until you file your October 15 or before that, until you file your return. And the reason that's it's a little bit tough to estimate is because in some cases, people wait until October 15th just because they file, they might have a business of a type that requires a later filing. So let me give you an example. I am the owner of a partnership, of an LLC of some kind. Those businesses are required to file on March 15th. But if they do not, and they they file an extension for the business, like I could have done last night instead of staying up until midnight to finish the tax return I was working on. If I had extended that to October, to 6 months from then, it would have been September 15th. I would not have known how much the business made until September 15th. So I personally would have had to wait until September 15th to know whether I was going to owe or not. So there are some exceptions, but if you do know that you're going to owe, yes, there is a possibility to make advance payments. Now, this question is a little vague. The one that I have on my screen, it says, do you know how taxes work? I mean, this could mean a lot of stuff. So just to emphasize a little bit on where I was leading with this, I was curious to know if the students who would have attended today have an idea of how taxes work in general, with all of these forms that they would receive, and most likely the majority of them would receive a W-2 and maybe interest income of sorts, but not too much beyond that. But do you have a good understanding of how taxes work and how the forms kind of play a role into tax preparation and why we do taxes every year?
Because the government wants our money.
That is true. That is definitely part of the answer, yes. So what I've learned when I started doing taxes and seeing more information behind the curtain, I realized that taxes, not only is it a formality that everyone has to go through with very few exceptions. I believe the state of Washington does not require tax returns from their citizens. And there are a couple of other states in the United States that also do not require taxes. But for the most part, the rest of us do. So the majority of the population of the United States and probably even the world have to file taxes. Now, what I have learned that I thought was really unique is that the reason why we file taxes is to kind of equalize what happened over the year in terms of taxes paid throughout employment. So for those of us who have jobs that provide the W-2 at the end of the year, it is a way for the government to say you have overpaid, underpaid, or paid just enough. You don't owe us anything. So the W-2 form, and we're going just a little bit into probably more depth than we need to, but I think it's so important for people to know that the W-2 form obviously has all the information for your pay throughout the year. So you have your gross receipts, the total amount of money that you've earned, and then you have a box that says total withholdings or total tax withheld. And that tells you this is how much tax you paid over the year. Now, the tax software is being used in this case to estimate how much you should have paid based on your earnings. And then the moment you put that W-2 information on there, the tax software is going to catch on to the fact that you've paid some tax, right? And it's going to tell you, hey, you underpaid or you overpaid. And something that also kind of tied it all in together is that the way that you end up overpaying or underpaying is not through mistake or error on anyone's part. It is simply, I mean, it could be in some cases, but it's simply through the way you fill out your employment information. So when you first join a company, that company is going to have you fill out some documents. They're going to say, we need your emergency contacts, we need your, copies of your certain documentation like your driver's license and your social security card. Those are more for immigration purposes. But then you have the W-4 form, and that is for tax purposes. So when you join a company, you get this entire package that says you need to, establish yourself as an individual, give us your information, fill these forms out, but also tell us what you want us to do tax-wise. And that I found so fascinating because I've seen those before, but it didn't really tie in until I started doing tax work. Just conceptually understanding what they represent. So the W-4 form and the Michigan W-4 form is what tells the employer, hey, this is how much tax I want to pay. Now, we're not all tax professionals no one's giving us the W-4 saying, you know, I wanted a tax amount on there from you. So that's why these forms are actually quite simplified to the point where, I should probably make a quick note. They were simplified up until 2020, and then something happened, and I'll talk about that in a second. But up to 2020, they were simplified to the point where you could say, okay, I'm a single individual. I'm not married. I do not have any kids, any dependents. I'm just going to mark myself as one exemption. What that means is when the employer gets that form filled out by me, the single individual with no dependents, the company will know, actually they don't need to know anything. They put the one exemption in the system, and the payroll system estimates how much tax is to be withheld from me as the employee. And the same thing goes with the Michigan form. It does the exact same thing for Michigan taxes. So these forms are just the instructions that you give to your employer that tells the employer what to do throughout the year. And in some cases, if they're lazy employers, for the rest of your employment. So if you don't get one of these forms every year, if you don't get a W-4 to fill out annually, you would have to go to your people, you know, your HR people, and say, my life situation has changed. I now have a child, or my life has changed because I'm now filing married as married instead of single. So those things have to happen, because if they do not happen, you will end up paying the taxes of a single person when you're married. In this case, it's a good situation, because if you file taxes after a year of claiming that you have been single, but then you file as a married individual, you are going to have taxes back. The government is going to say, well, there's two of you, you get more money when there are two of you. I won't go into much detail on that. There's a reason why when you file married, filing jointly, it is more beneficial than filing separately. So the government acknowledges that. But it could also bite you a little bit. If you were married and you become separated, or you become single and you file single, but you didn't change your status with your employer, you have underpaid your taxes, and now you are going to owe. Obviously, there are a lot more things at play in figuring all this stuff out. But I would say that minding that form that is filed with your employer, and always just kind of keeping it in the back of your mind, is important. So that's what I meant by how taxes work. It just, to me, in my mind, it feels like it's a cycle. You tell the employer what to do, you pay your taxes throughout the year, and at the end of the year, the end of the cycle, the government is going to say, you have instructed your employer wrong, or you have instructed your employer correctly. You owe, you don't owe, or we owe you. Those are the only three outcomes that you could have. And I have one more question on my sheet here, because I know I've gone on quite a lengthy explanation, but I hope it was useful on the W-4 form. Are you familiar with how much it costs to pay a tax preparer to do your taxes?
It varies, honestly, because I've used like tax services, and they're much more expensive than if I go to a person referred to do my taxes. I mean, I've literally paid like double the amount. So like, for example, what I pay now to the website is like $40. But if I was to go to All Tax, which is by my house, they'll charge me anywhere from $100 to $150 just to do my taxes. So that's why I do my own.
Yeah, I was going to say about $200, $250.
Yeah,
that's about right.
I last year I owed quite a bit, and I didn't file, and I didn't know that if you didn't file during the season, and of course no one told me about the extension, that it was a big deal, and I ended up having to pay like $200 just for like basic, where I would have paid $40. I was so upset, but anyway.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's unfortunate.
And it was more so because I couldn't find any information online that was clear regarding filing a previous year. And that was all that I found. I mean, I looked and looked and looked, so I'll never do that again. I don't care if I owe, how much I owe. I would rather file and pay and deal with the penalty than paying that amount just for the processing of my form. So yeah, I guess the more you have, it can be very costly.
That's very true.
Because I didn't even itemize and they charged me that much. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow. That's surprising. That's very surprising. Well, actually, I shouldn't say surprising. That's in line with the expectation, but it is surprising about the $200 that you had to pay. That was, that's unfortunate. Yeah, they are expensive. My brother, who owns a business, told me that a combination of his business tax return and his individual tax return, if it were to be prepared by a professional CPA, it would be anywhere between $600 to close to $1,000 for the preparation of both of these returns. So it can become very expensive. It's definitely never less than $100 from what I could gather. It costs them a little bit of money too for the software, and they employ individuals who process paperwork live versus the software that we buy online, which is automated and just a lot more simplistic in its nature. But tax preparers are definitely more expensive. Now, there are some situations that you cannot avoid where you would have to see a tax accountant. And some of those situations might have to do, if you have filed taxes in the past, it might have to do with an audit. It might have to do with any issues you might have had where you have to file another return. Maybe you would have to cancel the one you've sent before and just send another one. Those different types of communications with the IRS would cost money, and it would be advised to use a CPA for those types of situations. I would definitely not advise anyone to do an amended return using online software, just because it is limited in its abilities, in my opinion, and there might be some things that might be missed. And at that point, if you are amending something, or if you're defending yourself against an audit, or if you are filing something that is not just the typical, the typical 1040 or the typical extension form, the best thing to do is to consult a professional, have them look at the law for you and the tax regulations, and make sure that you leverage their expertise to get you where you need to be. At that point, it's worth the money, because the IRS, when you file your regular tax return, you can have a little bit of a mess up. Let's just say you forgot to include a little bit of income, you forgot to include some expenses, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's also luck, right? Because, the IRS chooses returns to audit pretty much on a random basis, and then they have the really high earners, the really rich people that they look at every year. And I know, because when I was working at EY, many of my clients would receive letters from the IRS saying, the IRS saying something along the lines of, your income has changed, or what is this and what is that? So we know that the IRS is watching. But for the regular folk, I would say that there is a possibility they could get away with something they don't have to amend using the regular software. However, when that letter, if not when, if that letter ever comes in from the IRS asking you to file something else, don't even take the chance with the software. Just go straight to your tax preparer. Make sure you get everything situated right away, and with the help of a professional. I just realized that the one that you mentioned, what was the software that you said you mentioned you were using for your taxes?
Easy Tax.
Easy Tax. That I do not have in here. I should have put it on there, because Easy Tax is probably more popular than Free Tax USA. But I do have some really common ones. Do you guys know about Tax Act?
Nope.
Okay, that's probably not as popular. I'm sure you probably heard about TurboTax, H&R Block. And then I personally have not heard of TaxSlayer and Free Tax USA. I have heard of Easy Tax, but when I did my search looking for the most popular ones, interestingly enough, TaxSlayer and Free Tax USA were right at the top of the search bar, along with TurboTax and H&R Block. The reason why Tax Act is on there specifically is because it's my preference specifically. That's the one that I use. Not for any reason in particular, not to, sway anyone to use Tax Act specifically, but it is very easy to use. It's the one I trust the most because that's all I've used ever since I started doing my own taxes. TurboTax, what was really interesting about it this year, and it might have been in previous years too, but I don't remember seeing the ads. This year, they've been everywhere. If you've seen the commercials, everyone's singing free, right? That's the TurboTax commercial. $0 for federal tax returns, $0 for state returns, and $0 to file. That is a big deal. Is anyone on this presentation going to use TurboTax this year? I was so surprised to see the $0 across the board, because what these types of software do usually, I mean, they are cheap. They're always going to be cheaper than a tax professional. But what I've learned is that they somehow find a way to charge you, even if it's a little bit of money, even if it's less than $100, they still have to get something. And it makes sense because it's not free, right? Software is not cheap. They have to make their own updates. They have to get paid. But TurboTax is claiming in this ad that I tend to believe that they are going to, this year, for those who want to use the service, are going to charge $0 for federal, state, and filing. That's a big deal. Maybe it's just for 1 year. Maybe it's just to get more people on board and get that information in. And then maybe they're going to flip and say, now it's going to cost you $59.99. But even for just 1 year of free tax preparation, not too bad. Now, the really big trick with these guys.
I'm sorry, man. So I've actually used TurboTax this year. It's not free.
It is not?
It is not free. So
how do they charge if they say it's $0?
There are some services that are required for you to complete your taxes, and those have a cost attached to them. So when you're done, you end up paying something.
Have you used it before?
I've used it this year.
How much, if you don't mind me asking, how much did it turn out to be?
It was a little over $100.
Okay, so that's definitely unexpected. So it is the bait and switch type thing where, so what kind of services are we talking about?
So they're basic services. There wasn't anything more than just your standard taxes for like with the W-2, but I can't recall what they were, what all the charges were, but it was like you can't proceed without this or that. And it's like, okay, and it's like $25.
Wow.
And so something will pop up. So, and I don't think, and with the state, there was a fee just to file the state. So I think what it was is you could actually do your taxes, but then you couldn't e-file them. You had to print them and mail them in. So I don't really understand what's actually free on there, but just on that normal tax situation, you're going to end up spending some money with the software.
Well, I really appreciate that information because this ad was very misleading and I was inclined not to believe what they were saying, but when I saw zeros across the board, I thought, where else would they charge? And it kind of sounds like it's just, inside the software, even though they're saying $0 for federal. That's incorrect if you said that they're charging for the W-2.
Now, I can't add something. The United Way partners with the tax service every year to provide free taxes for low income, anyone who makes $65,000 or less. That figure may have changed. It could be $60,000, $65,000. They normally partner with H&R Block. This year they partner with Tax Slayer. So if you use Tax Slayer, it is free. All of your filings, your state, even if you have a business, it was 100% free.
Wonderful. Okay.
But you have to.
I'm glad I have Tax Slayer on here.
But you have to go through United Way website, and they will send you a link. That link will send you to Tax Slayer, and then from there, it'll be free. But if you just go to Tax Slayer, then there's a charge. But you have to go to the United Way's link.
So for those of the students who are going to join this later and watch this presentation later, the United Way website is literally just typing in www.unitedway.com and then searching their website for tax software or Tax Slayer, or how would they navigate that wealth of information on the United Way website?
So
if you're familiar with it.
If you go to Google and type in United Way free tax service, the link will come up.
Excellent. Okay. That's a lot easier. Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that because I didn't want to mislead anyone, and I personally had not used TurboTax before. So I was not sure if this was fake, I guess, but it does sound like bait and switch if they're going to charge any cent on top of the zeros that they've listed on their website. So it's unfortunate that they do this. And I've also learned a similar lesson with Tax Act. It's still my favorite site because that's what I've been using for the longest time, and I like the way it flows. I've gotten used to the style. But that is the problem, because the first year I filed my taxes with Tax Act, it cost me $26 to file. $26 for everything. And as the years have gone by, maybe they've gotten better, or maybe they've gotten smarter, or maybe that was their plan all along to just get to that higher amount of money. But when I filed my taxes last year, it was somewhere near the $100 range as well. It was still worth not going to a CPA to do my taxes, but it was more than I expected to pay through Tax Act. Now, they're a little bit more upfront about their charges. Tax Act and H&R Block did publicize their prices, and they are somewhat in line with what I expected. I believe that they do not have a fee listed here for filing, which would also be included, but somehow they always upgrade me to the most expensive program, and that's how they get you, because you get all the way to the end, you fill out all your information, and you're so close to filing and you just want to be done. And then they tell you, okay, we can do that for you, but it's going to cost you. So that free service from United Way sounds fantastic. I think everyone who qualifies should use it. It sounds like there are no gimmicks. So try that first. If you fall outside of that range, if you're higher than, what was it, 65,000 you said, Perry?
Yeah, I believe it was 65,000.
Okay, so if you as an individual, or you along with your family, depending on how you file, are over that threshold, you would have to then default to one of these more, I guess, more popular but more expensive tax software options that I've listed here. So it really depends on where you're at in your life right now. But these 5 options, and most importantly, the one that Perry shared, the Tax Slayer through the United Way, are probably the best that I can think of in terms of options here. Now, I was going to dive into Tax Act specifically, because Tax Act is what I've used and what I'm familiar with, and I ended up creating a profile. So I'm going to just hop off of the presentation and see if I can go straight into the site if it's still available. Yes, it is. So tax training, this is my name that I created for this presentation. I don't even know if I'm still logged in, but we'll try it. I won't bore you with too much information, but what I've learned about this software is that it has shortcuts. And I absolutely love it, because you can go into the software and say, okay, I'm just going to take a step by step by step, which is fantastic. That's where you need to be in your first year. It's going to be the easiest way to go. However, I can tell you right now with absolute certainty that after you do it once, after you do your taxes once through the same software, that you're going to become so comfortable doing your taxes, you're going to want to skip some steps. I'm not familiar with any other types of software, but I'm pretty sure they all work the same. When you start getting comfortable with what you're doing, you can actually skip right ahead. So I'm on the website right now, just kind of circling around the table of content that this site offers. And I think it's really, really cool, because if you just want to go straight to the point and go right in your summary, it's going to tell you all the types of income that you could report, and you can skip where you need to be. Same with deductions, credits, taxes, miscellaneous. We show here the standard deduction. Does anyone on this presentation know the difference between standard deduction and itemized deduction? The standard deduction is what the IRS considers to be a sufficient deduction for the typical American. So anyone filing a tax return in the United States who has a certain situation, so let's just refer to you as the single taxpayer, filing single, not married, you're going to receive $6,200. I was covering the individual one first. So the $6,200 is what the IRS, well, technically the president, but then it, went through the IRS, the approval of the IRS and many other people and committees, and it has been established as $6,200 for the tax year 2020. Then we have the standard deduction for married couples filing jointly, and that is $12,400. That's what we're looking at here. I think the software is anticipating that I will be filing jointly, which is correct, but I have not put any basic information, so I guess this just defaulted here. $12,400. So the IRS is saying, if you're a single person, we expect you to spend about $6,200 or less in deductible items. And we expect you as a married couple to be around $12,400 or less, and you'll be fine. So a lot of people benefit from this increase in the standard deduction, because the standard deduction is what reduces your taxable income. It is, I shouldn't call it that, but it's kind of like a gift from the IRS saying, even if you only spent $2,000 this year in deductible items, we're going to give you $6,200. If you spend $4,000, we're still going to give you $6,200. If you spend $12,100 as a married couple, we're going to give you $12,400. So these are pre-established. If you fall behind those below those amounts, you still receive the standard deduction. Now, the people who itemize, those are the individuals who have higher expenses than the standard deduction. And those individuals benefit from itemizing, because by itemizing, they're claiming these individual categories of expenses, deductible expenses, that just exceed that amount. So it doesn't benefit someone who has higher expenses than $12,400 to say, I'm limited to $12,400 as a married couple, or part of a married couple. You would want to claim your $16,000 or your $20,000 of expenses without the government saying, no, you can't. You have to be just like everyone else. So those who fall below the standard deduction get a boost, they get a benefit, which is fantastic. Those who fall over the standard deduction get to benefit from actually claiming what they've incurred versus being limited to the amount of the standard deduction. So I like I don't know if there's fairness in it per se, but I love the fact that the majority of people do benefit from using the standard deduction. And it also makes it somewhat fair for those who have higher expenses and want to add itemized because they're not capped. So I think this is fantastic. And I also got excited when I saw that the standard deduction went up. Obviously, a lot more other changes have taken place with taxes in 2020, but this is probably the most notable. So going back to the software, now I've been skipping around in the menu just because I'm already at the advanced level, but it's unfair for those who are watching this recording to just see that portion of it. So I want to just skip to the front again and say, this is going to be absolutely breezy because you are going to fill out information based on questions. So every single thing in the software is going to be a question that you have to answer. Now, just think about the tax accountant and how they sit across from you and they ask you, have you gotten married? Can I see your W-2? Do you have any other income? Do you have any other expenses? This is exactly, and I mean exactly, what the software does. So I know that I could go into much more depth, but honestly, every single thing on the software looks like this. Every single section in the software looks like this. Lots of words, lots of questions. Won't be anything scary, anything number driven, other than boxes where you have to put in information from your W-2 or other forms, but they are going to direct you through every single thing. Look at that. That right there is clarification as to what married really means. These things are all over the software. So what I'm trying to say, because we're running out of time and I want to make sure that I complete my presentation briefly, is that this software, and not just Tax Act, I mean in general, tax software, whatever you end up choosing, is going to be just like a person asking you questions, and instead of live questions, you're going to have to fill them out on the computer. So do not feel intimidated. Give it a try. Go to the United Way Tax Layer website, poke around a little bit, see if it makes sense for you. But I'm telling you, you can do this, and it's not as difficult as it sounds.
Question, Melanie, real quick, can you explain the different types of income?
Yes.
That can be a bit intimidating.
Different types of income, yes. The first one that comes to mind and the most common is the W-2 income, which is employee income. If you were hired with a company that brought you on and had you fill out all those forms, they consider you an employee, you will receive a W-2 form at the end. So I call that W-2 employment, which is, again, the most common. But in some cases, employers want to call you a contractor. They don't want you to hire you. They don't want to hire you because maybe insurance might be too expensive, or there might be some liability associated with your role, and they choose to pay you with a 1099. Now, this should never be it should never be a mystery. You should always know whether you are an employee or a contractor / 1099 worker, and the software accommodates for these forms. I would say these are the most two common types of income that you can earn unless you have your own business. And if you do, maybe the software is a little, maybe business returns should be addressed with a CPA, but if it's between a 1099 income or W-2 type of income, the software is going to accommodate quite nicely. And you just have to literally fill out boxes with numbers. That W-2 has about 20 boxes, and I don't know if I can skip that far into the software to show you W-2 income. But if we were to skip to right here, salaries, wages, and tips, that's where your W-2 income would go. All you have to do is add your W-2 into the software, and you're following the prompt. You're going to see an employer identification number. You're going to see the employer's information that you have to fill out. And then you're going to go straight to the boxes that tell you how much you've earned, how much tax you paid, how much Social Security, and other types of taxes you have paid, like Medicare. And you're just following the prompts. You're following the boxes on the site. And the moment you hit continue, your federal refund or your federal tax is going to update accordingly, which is on the top left corner of the screen. So you shouldn't go back and change any information. Definitely do not do that. But it is going to give you a little bit of a preview. If all you have is a W-2 and you've already entered it, you should already have an idea of what you will owe or how much you'll get back just by looking up here. And the moment you add a state, there's going to be another section right here that says Michigan refund or Michigan tax due if it's Michigan. It could be any other state, but that was just an example. Did that answer the question, or did I go into the weeds a little?
No, thank you. I just wanted to cover the types of income, because I know that when you pull up the box for income, or like when types of income, it could be a little intimidating, like say, because it says foreign income. You can have, like I had done someone's taxes this year, a friend of mine, and they had gambling. And so I had to put in information from receipts they received from the casino with their winnings. And there was information on there that I had never seen before, like, and there were like terms, they were like what slot machine, date, and all that. But it was interesting that the tax software aligned perfectly with what was on the form. So basically all I did is transfer the information from the form into the boxes that were on the tax software, and it was really simple and easy to follow. And so that's one of the things I like about the tax software. It kind of like holds your hand and walks you through the process.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the moment you receive a form, you should know that there is a section or a category in the tax software that is going to accommodate for that. For instance, if you've earned interest income, you're going to receive a 1098 from that institution, whether it's a bank or an investment type place. There is going to be a section, let me see where that is actually. It's in here. I'm not really catching it right now just by browsing this. Oh, it's right there. Taxable interest income. It's right at the top. So taxable interest income is going to match the 1098 form. Just like you mentioned with the gambling form, that's going to match. So these guys have perfected this tax software where whatever category you're in, if you have a form in your hand, they're going to have matching box numbers, and all you have to do is just drop the numbers in. So it makes it very easy. And while we were talking, this little box showed up on the top right of my screen, and it said, get one-on-one help with your federal or state tax questions. I'm not entirely sure if this is something that I have to pay for. Oh, it is. So if you do need the extra help, there is an expert at the end of this button. If you're willing to pay the $65 that the service costs, it tells you exactly what it covers, and it also gives you a schedule, I guess. That's very interesting. It gives a lot of information about the service, but we also have a lot of information on the right that does not cost a single extra cent. So if you know what you are looking for, W-2 for instance, you hit search, and then you see what information you were looking for. Obviously, I just put W-2, so it's very vast. But if you narrow in and you say, I want miscellaneous income on W-2 or taxes paid or whatever question you have, you might be able to find it right in the help center for no additional money. So again, this is not the only software you can use, but I can promise you that most tax software is going to look pretty much the same, and it's not intimidating at all. All you have to do is just sign up and poke around. You do not owe a single cent until you file. So you can go as far as just going, okay, this is my refund, or this is how much I owe. And they say, this is how much money you're going to give us to file it. And maybe you change your mind. Maybe you want to use something else, but at least you have gotten a chance to try it out without paying a single cent. So it doesn't cost anything to sign up. I've created this profile for something called tax training. I didn't have to pay a cent for it. And I could go as far as getting into this section right here where I'm hovering, which is filing, going through all of these prompts, clicking on all of these buttons, putting all these numbers in, and they won't ask for a credit card until I get to filing. This is where it starts to get expensive. So give it a try. It's worth it, I promise you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative. Let's talk a little bit about social media. Alex, do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can do that. So, if you want to follow us online, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, on our YouTube channel under UMD Trio Programs. If not, you can also find us on the University of Michigan Dearborn website under the Office of Trio Programs. And if you ever need to reach out to us, you can you can email us at utoolscollegeprep@gmail.com. You can also follow our sponsor on all the social medias at MI College Access. And that if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you go on the description and fill out the survey in the description. And yeah.
Just as a reminder to all of our listeners, the more that you participate in our sessions, the greater the opportunity that you could win a gift card. We give away prizes to everybody who participates in our live sessions. But we have some special gift cards that we'll give away after the 6th session. So if you miss one of the sessions, you can always go to the YouTube channel and watch a session. There's a survey that you can fill out afterwards so that we can record, so that we know that you've watched and we can record your attendance. But the more sessions that you participate in, the more opportunities to win some nice gift card prizes. Okay.
Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you again for joining us. Thank you.
My pleasure.